feature project that we could work on collectively across our pretty diverse communities, and whether that's something like the launching Beagle, or whether it's the International Polar Year or something like that. And it would be interesting for us to maybe have a little discussion about that this afternoon. But for now, since our visitors are joining us, I'm going to turn it over to Carol for a little introduction.
Hello, Marsha? Yes? Do you have your audio on? Maybe I'll knock it in just a minute. I'd like to introduce, this is Marsha Sharp, and she's with the, and she and I have never met, by the way. She's with the LBJ Presidential Library that is on campus of the University of Texas in Austin. But I guess Ken's not going to be with us today.
Ken had jury duty.
Ken, who is, I guess he's the main project lead on this, the presidential timeline, is as Marsha said, the jury duty. So we're glad to have you, Marsha. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Great. Okay, I'm just going to turn it over to you. In the audience today are representatives from higher ed as well as K-12, and from all over the U.S. and England, UK, anywhere else, anyone outside of the U.S. So that's us, and feel free to just get started.
Thank you. Also, thanks for inviting us to be a part of your conference. What I want to do today is go through a relatively new project. It was launched in January of this year, and it is definitely a collaborative project. As all of you who teach social studies and deal with social studies teachers perhaps know, it's difficult to try to get students to work with primary sources when the primary sources are in myriads of places. And that seems to be the trend to get students to work toward higher level thinking activities and putting projects together. What I wanted to do first of all is tell you a little bit about the project and then go through it briefly. It is so large, there's no way I'm going to be able to cover all of the territory today, so to speak. But I did want to give you a flavor of it and give you, entice you to explore on your own, because it is such a huge project. This is not all of it, by the way, that is up now. Each year we plan to add to the project, each library will add to the project, as well as National Archives and the University of Texas. But let me tell you about it and how it came about. As I said, collecting appropriate source materials to support learning activities is really challenging. And so what the idea was to do was to put these together in one place that teachers and students could access for activities and for their own projects. I want to go talk about the project. If you can go on the screen, I don't know where you are right now because I'm going to be clicking on several things right now. If you could go to the screen. The presidential timeline was designed and developed collaboratively by the Learning Technology Center at the University of Texas at the College of Education in conjunction with the presidential libraries and within the National Archives system and Terra Incognita Productions. It was made possible through a very generous grant through the National Endowment of Humanities with additional support from the LBJ Foundation and University of Texas Libraries. What I want to do today, I work very informally, so interrupt if you have questions, and I'll leave some time at the end for Q&A if you have any. But what I wanted to do is go briefly through it, show you kind of the bare bones of it and how you can access various areas of it. As you can see, there are photographs of all the presidents with within the National Archive system, starting with Hoover, all the way to Clinton, and soon will be George W. Bush Library. And the interactive timeline, as you can see, starts here. I'm going to concentrate, because I'm most familiar with it, on Lyndon Johnson. That does not mean the others aren't as important. This is the one I'm most familiar with. If you click on this timeline, you will notice that you get a text, an introduction. And if you'll look at the top, you'll see early life and career, the presidency, and post-presidency. And within these, you can explore the timeline even further. For instance, in his post-presidency, you can see where he returns to the OBJ Ranch. And if you click on that, you will get photographs for this particular one with the information about the particular photograph. Didn't mean to shut the whole thing down, but we'll go back. In his presidency, let's explore there. Not all of the assets have been filled in. You will notice the Guantanamo water crisis is still a work in progress. The riots in Panama, but the ones with the pluses, you will notice, have assets added to them. This is when LBJ becomes President of the United States, when he was sworn in aboard Air Force One. There you will find the notes that he spoke when he arrived at Andrews Air Force Base in Washington, D.C. These were the first words that he spoke to the United States citizens as President of the United States, and it is corrected in his hand. If you go to this, well, there we go. Why does that keep closing? I'm sorry. Here you have him taking the oath of office with a photograph aboard Air Force One. And you have frankly, I'm used to using PC and Macs, and that makes blanks in this. You also have a copy of his daily diary for that day. You can see the very beginning of his day as Vice President in Fort Worth, and you can see the transition from when he is Vice President, when he becomes President, and on through the day. I think there are 9 pages to the President's daily diary. There are 9 pages. And some of them have assets of notes from secretaries and people who were aboard Air Force One who give their information. Okay, let's go back to the timeline. I want to show you one other thing. If you look at the exhibits, sometimes they might didn't. There we go. This particular exhibit includes the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and this shows all of the documents. I'll show you how these documents are related a little later on. But you can talk about the Gulf of Tonkin when there is an activity regarding the Gulf of Tonkin, a web quest for high school students using the Gulf of Tonkin incident for them to go through that involves some role playing also. This is a map. You can, everything here with a couple of exceptions, in the early Clinton timeline and a few things in the John F. Kennedy timeline. With those 2 exceptions, everything is in the public domain. So if you have a color printer, you can print this out and you can see, you can get a larger view of it. It tells you what the map is, and you could have this as a handout, you could put it into a PowerPoint, you could have it set it up as a PDF if you wanted to, but you could use this in your classroom with your students. let's go into one of the things that was happening during the Gulf of Tonkin incident was that in addition to dealing with that, President Johnson received a call from FBI Assistant Director Deloche reporting that the bodies of the 3 murdered Mississippi civil rights workers had been found. If you will recall, in June of '64, they had been murdered, and this was about 40 days later that they had been found. So this gives the students an idea that the president's job is not just one thing at a time. It is incredible multitasking. We also have telephone conversations. So if you click on these, this is a recording of a telephone call from FBI Assistant Director Deloche to the president, telling him of the discovery of 3 bodies in Mississippi, believed to be the bodies of the 3 civil rights workers. They didn't know at the time, but it turned out that yes, indeed, those were the 3 bodies. So if you just click on play, sometimes you get lots of dead air, but nothing is erased. That's just one example of a phone call, and there are several phone calls regarding that. If we go back. Wanted to go into the educator section here because this, I think, is one of the richest resources for some of you. In the educational activities, there are 2 areas in which we set up right now for students to interact. One is the student as a curator. They can go in and select items. They can, you can set it up as they can be a museum curator. And they tell a story, selecting items, selecting things from the gallery that they want to use to tell this story. For instance, in the Hoover's response to the stock market crash, their activity is kids as curators. And you enter, there are lots of really great political cartoons in this one, with a description, and they begin. And there is a task that they need to complete. And you can print these out. If you want to use a storyboard, they can do that, print out a printer or a color printer if that it allows. You could have them set it up in a web-based or a computer-based program. If you wanted to, they could work individually, together as groups. It lends itself to lots of different ways of doing that. You can go to the next page, or you can select a page. You can look at the students page, the assets, which are included in this. And that means the items that students are going to use for the exhibit. And you can also look at these and enlarge them and see what they are. This is a telegram from Hoover to the governors along with a summary of his replies regarding the stock market crash. And you can print this out. One of the things this does is students pick out, you could limit the number of assets that they use, the number of items that they use, and tell the story that way. They could write text, they could write descriptions going with that, to go with that, so that whoever is viewing their exhibit would know the story. So it lends itself to lots of different areas that they could do. Let's see.
Marsha,
Yes.
what process did your library and the other libraries go through to determine what materials they were going to make available? And
That was a tough one. That was a tough one. And this, especially at the Johnson Library, the archivists worked diligently on this, and I want to go into ours, which was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And one of the issues that was wrestled with at all of the libraries is we have so much material on any one particular subject. How do you select without it being, without it becoming a secondary source, if that makes any sense? Because when you're selecting, you're automatically eliminating some things that may be important to someone else. So what they did is they went through and just determined what they thought might be the most important documents for people to be using when they were telling a particular story. It was not an easy process. Does that answer your question?
yes, thank you.
Okay. Recognizing that selecting particular items from a particular topic, let's say the Gulf of Tonkin, you're eliminating lots of others and perhaps eliminating part of the story. But what I know our archivists in particular, what they particularly tried to do was to include something from every phase of that story so that it would be complete, if that makes any sense. They tried to select the most important documents or the most important telephone conversations or the most important photographs that could lend itself to telling a complete story, even though some of the items may be left out. Any other questions? Anybody else? Okay. I wanted to go back into I want to go into educators again. I want to move down into, as you can see, let me slow myself down here. You can see Hoover's response to the stock market crash, Pearl Harbor, which is a day which will live in infamy. This was Roosevelt. Truman's was the atomic bomb. Crisis at Little Rock, which was Eisenhower's. JFK and the Peace Corps, LBJ and the Gulf of Tonkin. We have two. We also have kids as curators. Nixon in China, President Ford in the fall of Saigon. And by the way, the Nixon Library opened, well, it's been open, but it officially became part of the National Archives this summer in July. So the line of libraries from Hoover to Clinton is now complete without with the Nixon Library being included in that. President Ford in the fall of Saigon, the Iraq hostage crisis with President Carter, the Challenger speech file from President Reagan, and the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall. No, that was, let's see, Ford. This is Ford Carter, the Challenger speech file, and then the rise and fall of the Berlin Wall, Reagan. And there are several additional ones here. President Clinton and Little Rock Central High School. What I wanted to do is go back into LBJ, the Gulf of Tonkin, and you can see this is a web quest that I'm covering here. And it begins with a photograph, which was the North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacking the USS Maddox, August 2nd, 1964. Now, I know some of you may be thinking in your minds, well, with all the news that's been going back and forth lately, that the Gulf of Tonkin incident perhaps really didn't happen. What we have presented here is what was presented at the White House, the incident that was reported at the White House at the time, and the reaction of the president. We're not making any statement as to whether it did or did not happen. This is what happened at the time when the president and his administration believed that it did indeed occur, whether it occurred or not. So we're not making any statements one way or the other. These are from our files and what the historical record shows from the president, from President Johnson's administration, if that helps for any clarification. There's an introduction, and you can go through, and it gives students a task. And there are a number of roles that students can assume in this project. You can also, I'm not going through the whole thing, but you can also select a page. You can go into the evaluation. You can go into the process, which helps explain what you do, step 1, step 2, step 3, divide the class into groups. And it also shows some of the documents. For instance, this is a cable from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Kids love this because, you know, see the top secret up here, it's been opened, and if you print this out in color printer, it works wonderfully. They love to see these things. And you can see where it was declassified, and who declassified it, on what dates, and that sort of thing. So these kinds of things are really neat assets for kids to see. They also lend themselves to document analysis if you do those kinds of activities in your classrooms. So let me close. Let's go back to here. I wanted to go in here and look at a little bit at part of the web quest with some of the, I meant to go into the kids as curators. This is still using the Gulf of Tonkin, but you can see where it tells you how you begin, what the task is. You can look at a particular document. This is the joint resolution that was passed for the maintenance of peace and security in Southeast Asia. It's better known as the Tonkin Gulf Resolution. What I wanted to also do is go back into let's see if this is hiding back here. Trying to get into the gallery. starting over. When you want this, oh, there it is. Duh. Go into exhibits. I'm sorry. I'm used to using these. It's not working. This is a good example. If you want to find it, just Google presidential timeline. Come up as presidential timeline of the 20th century, and you get right back. Sorry about that, folks. I want to go into the interactive timeline. I want to show you the gallery is the next thing I want to show you. The first screen that comes up, you'll see a row of lots and lots of pictures from all the presidents. But what I'm going to particularly show you is the filter. You can filter and get any of the assets that are shown anywhere in the timeline simply by filtering by president, first of all. If you want artifacts, maps and charts, moving images, photographs and other graphic materials, sound recordings, and textual records. Let's say for Lyndon Johnson, you want textual records. And then you search. And all the records that are included in the timeline will come up. And you can roll over it and you get a brief descriptor of what that record is without having to bring up the entire record. For instance, what is this? Well, it's a campaign poster from 1960. You can't read this, but it's a memorandum from Lyndon Johnson to John Kennedy about LBJ's mission to Southeast Asia. So you can look at the assets, okay, and you can go back. If you wanted to filter, let's say, for moving images, there's one video, and that video is a radio and television report to the American people following the renewed aggression in the Gulf of Tonkin. So if you didn't know where a particular asset was, and you knew, oh, I saw that somewhere, you can do a search of the entire website by president and find what you needed. The other thing I wanted to show is these, I'm going to go back into the gallery. Also in the gallery, to show that, you get a number of pages if you wanted to scroll through and maybe have students just look through what was there. Not in any particular, maybe identify who is this president or what administration did this fall under. You can search that way and you can see there are 15 plus pages. There's another thing I wanted you to look at. I want to go back into educators. There's a discussion board that is in the process of being set up. There are also additional resources that you can access, resources for teachers, archives and primary source resources. This is not by any means a complete list, but it's something that you can have your students start with. Almost everything in the National Archives and anything in the Presidential Libraries, the Library of Congress that's going to be online is probably going to be in the public domain. But my guess is if you're using it in the classroom, anywhere in the classroom, you have fair use at any rate. And then educators' resources are listed here. And so if you just scroll over, there's something on primary source learning, so you can access those resources too. These are links to all the multimedia, audio, and video resources from the presidential timeline for use in educational activities. So Herbert Hoover doesn't have any. There's a couple of audio recordings from Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, or a number from him. So you can access those, listen to them, pull them out in isolation if you wanted to, use them as part of another lesson if you wanted to so you have access to all the audio there. One of the things I did want to add or reiterate, this is by no means complete. What we are hoping to do is each year add one major asset. For instance, what we would like to be able to do when you go into the timeline is across, let's say, if you're looking for civil rights, you would be able to go across presidents, not just in isolation, but you get an umbrella of civil rights, let's say through 3 or 4 or 5 or more presidents, so that you have a continuum. We're hoping for that in the future. We're looking at adding, at each library, adding at least one asset every year, and as new libraries come online, they will also be added. So we hope to get this so robust that it is enormous and you can search with just, let's say civil rights or foreign policy in Southeast Asia, or foreign policy in Europe, or foreign policy in the USSR and Russia, or something like that, so that you have large umbrellas under which you can look. We're not at that point yet, but that's a dream that we have, and that's what we're working toward. I have any questions thus far. I've skimmed over a lot, and there's a lot of information here. We have about 10 minutes, and I did want to leave plenty of time for questions if you have questions.
We're in a large room, so hold just a minute. We have a question.
Okay.
Identify yourself for Marsha.
Hi there, this is Tricia Gazen, and I am a web developer at NOAA, the National Ocean Service, and I was really impressed with the gallery filter. And I'm curious to know, how did you come up with the terms to set for that filter? Was it a collaborative effort? Because you have such a massive amount of data.
The terms in, let's go to the gallery, so I'll know what you're talking about. Whoops. Down here, you're talking about a filter?
Yeah, there's in the gallery, and then there's a button that said, yeah, I'm there. Okay.
Good.
So
Where
those
it's all
terms-
formats?
Yeah, exactly.
I think that probably came as a collaboration with lots of input from Terra Incognita, the people that put this together.
And I'm wondering, with regards to that, because it looks like that gallery is very much heavily flash-based, is there any attention to 508 compliance? One of the challenges that I've run into was making our sites as accessible as possible, and
Yes.
using Flash has always been a challenge with that.
One of the things we had to do, because this is the National Archives and Presidential Libraries project, is because we're federal entities, we have to be accessible. So we have, if you will notice, we have metadata that allows rollover for identification. But also, there is a text version. If you'll notice down here on the bottom of the first page, there is a text version. And you can go through the timeline, the exhibits, the gallery, and all of that is in text, so that, let's say, a reader could interpret that for a person who is blind.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're
That's
welcome.
wonderful.
Good questions.
Ken, who really directed the project, it's unfortunate he couldn't be here today. In a conversation I had with him recently, Marsha, we're here at the Internet 2 conference, and one of the topics, which I don't know if you'll be able to address or not, is how we can partner, how the presidential timeline can partner with Internet 2. There's a lot of resources that, well, other projects that have been developed material specifically for Internet 2. And I do know that Ken said that maybe some of the videos, compression is a big issue, that sort of thing, and that he was looking at developing some future materials that was not compressed. In other words, maybe in HD or something along those lines. But anyway, for future, anyone else have other questions? I mean, this really is fantastic in bringing all these materials together. Okay, we have a question, just a moment.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob from the Exploratory Museum in San Francisco. This is a really nice site. I just wanted to compliment the content creators and developers. I had a question about integrating video. I see there's a lot of audio and video downloadables for teachers, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about thinking that went into how much video to think about incorporating into the site and what types of challenges you would have if you were to increase that amount.
Challenges in terms of
Technical challenges, archival, any issues relating to metadata, presentation, integration with the site.
I do know that the metadata is provided by each individual library that we go through, I say we, the archivists go through each asset and provide metadata for that. The audio and video clips are not downloadable from the Flash site or the tech site. So not being a tech person myself, I don't know how to address that beyond that. As far as the number, and maybe I'm hearing you incorrectly, the number of audio and video included, we didn't have a number on there. If it was appropriate, we added it. I don't know if I'm addressing your question.
Well, and you may not have heard earlier, this project, I can't remember the name of the company, but they actually had probably a technical integrator doing this for you.
Terra Incognito, here in Austin.
Okay, so that was their technical resource. So if you want to ask, Ken would probably be able to answer some of the technical questions with that company.
And I bet if you contacted Terra Incognito, they could answer them too.
Right. Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I'm unable to help you in that area.
It's not a problem, thank you. What would you like? You want to talk a little bit more? Marsha, the Internet 2 community, we meet twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
Fall is always a different location, so we're in San Diego. But our spring meeting is always in Washington, D.C., actually Crystal City. And it would be great to have someone come visit this group, which is the K-20 working group next spring. We'd love to have that and to have a discussion about how to integrate, like some of your presentations into the Internet 2 community. I know you work with the project worked with the Library of Congress and who else besides the different presidential libraries?
Well, right now, all of the assets in this particular website are from the presidential libraries. In the future, we do hope to incorporate beyond the presidential libraries, but there is so much there right now, it's almost overwhelming.
I can imagine. Just getting this far is really fantastic, being able to narrow down what you have. How's the funding going for now and in the next couple of years?
It's my understanding that that's a work in progress, that they've requested additional funding to continue this, and also looking at perhaps a different arm of this. I'm not that familiar with it at this point, but which would include expanding into Library of Congress and some of the other areas that have rich assets and primary sources. beyond perhaps even presidential libraries, maybe even some of the presidential libraries that are not under the auspices of National Archives, but that do have extensive primary sources that are privately owned, perhaps.
That would be wonderful. Well, we appreciate your time with us today and stepping in, coming. Ken was hopeful, I think, that he wasn't going to be called for jury duty, but obviously he was.
He was. I heard from him right at 5 o'clock Friday afternoon. He said, "Gotta do it." So
We understand. Well, thank you so much, Marsha. We really appreciate it.
thank you.